What's happening, my fellow YouTubies? Welcome back to the channel of Mike the Great Studios. And today we're going to be talking about something a little bit different than my usual content. And that is mostly about the recent news that everybody picked up, which I'm pretty sure a lot of you have already heard about this. It's been a couple weeks. And if you've been looking along on the internet and seeing all the different articles and all that stuff. But basically, James Gunn is teaming up with Peter Safran, and they are not only taking over DC Studios, but they are renaming the DC Extended Universe into the DC Universe. So now it's no longer called the DCEU. Now it's called the DCU. Basically, I have a couple of mixed feelings on how I feel about this stuff. What's interesting is the fact that they had announced it on October 25th. I believe that was like 4 days after Black Adam came out, and that was at least like 6-ish, or about no, it's not 6, 2 or 3 days, I believe, after Man of Steel 2 was confirmed. So taking in that some of that other mixed news inside of there, it surprises me that it at least got to that point where they figured out. I mean, it was about a year ago when the Suicide Squad came out, when James Gunn made his last movie. So I would have figured, like, I don't know how they came to their senses, like right after Black Adam came out. Then they thought, hey, maybe James Gunn can take over the DCEU. I wonder, like, that could work if this worked. I don't know. It just didn't match up to how they came to this decision. But basically, how I feel about it, it's kind of in a mixed aspect, because at the same time, I think James Gunn is great. Basically, if you don't know who James Gunn is, he's a filmmaker and he's a director, and his new partner, the other guy, Peter Safran, he's basically a producer. And James Gunn is responsible for directing the Guardians of the Galaxy movies, as well as the Suicide Squad that just came out last year, and he's also made a couple of others. Like there was this movie Slither and this movie Super about 10 to 15 years ago. So he's only made 5 films in his career, basically, but they're all pretty good films. But again, I have a couple of mixed feelings, mostly because I mean he's a great director. I mean, I like his movies. I've only seen 3 of them. But basically, taking that in with the nature of the DCEU, where it started, it just, his vision as a director, I just don't feel like it really matches up, especially when you're comparing that to Zack Snyder's usual films. Like, basically, how I see it, Zack Snyder is the one that started the DCEU. Well, I mean, now it's called the DCU, but Zack Snyder was responsible for starting the DCEU back in 2013 when he made Man of Steel. And then, but back then, I'm pretty sure in 2013, 9 years ago, Man of Steel wasn't intended to start off a shared universe. That's not what they built up to. And then, but that wasn't really established until Batman v Superman. But still, Zack Snyder was responsible for starting the DCEU with his vision and making those 2 movies. He has a bit of this dark tone to the way he does his movies. And James Gunn, he has a bit of a darkness too. I mean, some of his movies obviously aren't intended for kids, but I mean, still, there's this goofy way in which he makes his movies. I mean, his last movie literally involved a talking shark, and his Marvel movies involved a talking raccoon and a talking tree. So he does some goofy stuff, like in what he does with his movies. And Zack Snyder had Batman branding people with machine guns and just mowing people down like the Punisher. So that, I don't know, the way Joss Whedon, not Joss Whedon, James Gunn would tie himself into the DCEU, what he would do with the DCEU, it just doesn't add up with what we've gotten in the past. So I mean, Peter Safran, I'm not really familiar with all of his film experience. I mean, he is only a producer. It's mostly about the fact that James Gunn is joining into the project, which I guess, since I'm on that train of some of the negative stuff, like, I just hope, I don't know if James Gunn is usually the type that would be involved in the takeover as president of the studio projects. I mean, especially because he is documented to direct Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. He's been rehired by Marvel to redirect to direct Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. So not entirely sure how that works with him taking over DC and him still working with Marvel. But basically, what I'm hoping is that the DCEU, the DC, I keep calling it that, but now it's called the DC Universe, DCU. I just don't. I'm just hoping that his usual kind of movie vibes they don't tie into the rest of the DCEU. I just don't want to see Superman and Batman and all these characters in that goofy little tone that James Gunn is usually known for, especially with Peacemaker and the Suicide Squad, all the other projects that he did. And they did that a little bit in Wonder Woman 1984 with that 80s vibe, which I really didn't like all that much. So basically, basically my biggest fear is that James Gunn doesn't make things worse. I don't know, the DCEU is already a little all over the place. Right now, it is still inconsistent and it's kind of a mess. Especially they got all the Suicide Squad movies and the Shazam movies, Black Adam and Aquaman. Like not everything is really tying in together, and it's unclear the direction that they're taking, especially how they announced Man of Steel 2. And that's another fear. I just don't want James Gunn to take away Zack Snyder's usual vision. Like when Man of Steel comes out, I don't really want that to feel like a James Gunn movie. I want that to feel more like a Zack Snyder movie. But anyway, that's mostly the big problem I have with that. Is just hoping that James Gunn doesn't incorporate his usual movie style into the rest of the DCU. But some of the positives there, I mean, I think what James Gunn can do a little better is that he could actually influence the best and heart out of the DCU. I mean, he did that very well with Guardians of the Galaxy and the Suicide Squad, actually making the audience feel the emotion with all the characters. I mean, he's not directing most of the other projects, but still, he can pull that off pretty well. So maybe he can improve. He can even possibly improve Ben Affleck's Batman. I think that's a nice little strategy there. Some other stuff he can do is I don't know, maybe I'm not saying that his vision like could be incorporated into Man of Steel 2, but he can improve Superman a little bit more, just adding some more elements to the characters, and basically, yeah, he can bring in a lot more heart to the DCU. So there's a couple to love here. I mean, obviously, he's not Kevin Feige. I mean, he's worked for Kevin Feige with Marvel since he's been working with Marvel. I mean, Kevin Feige, what Kevin Feige did with the MCU has been absolutely phenomenal. Like what he did with the Marvel Cinematic Universe. But James Gunn on the other side, like I'm just wondering, like what he can do with the DCU. I mean, he's not Kevin Feige, obviously, but well, I mean, this should be pretty interesting. But basically, where I wanted to start is at least getting Man of Steel 2 confirmed and actually getting it a director and actually taking consideration into Henry Cavill and bringing him back into the role. So interesting. Just finding out this only 4 days after Black Adam came out. But this was just something that I really had to talk about. So should be pretty exciting. I don't know how it's gonna work with him taking over. But we'll see in the next like couple of years, even after 9 years that the DCU has been in production. So let me know in the comments what you think about James Gunn and Peter Safran taking over the DCU. Remember to like and subscribe if you like this video. And I will see you next time.